Alright, so I wanted to show this build because it was several days in the making, and I've lost a couple times, but I think it's the best it's ever been. So I'm playing a Surtmir, which applies freeze on attack, and on apply freeze applies equal stacks of Scorch. I'm running Stand Ground as my survivability. But yeah, before I go into my primary abilities, I'll tell you about my culture. I'm doing an Inflexibility build, so I have as much Inflexibility as possible. The VV is giving me max resistance on everything. It has a nice passive standstill effect, which lets me kill my own Vine Spawn for some more healing. Dorak's Blessing. I'm playing Dorok. The poise application is nice. Mostly the cool part about Dorok is that his first ability is a cleanse, so cleanses non-poise effects. So if I end up with several hundred Scorch or several hundred freeze, I can just cleanse them. His other abilities are almost always at 0 out of 1, zeroed out on their prayer. His third prayer would be incredibly powerful if I can get a charge off. But other than that, his cleanse is nice, and the passive poise is nice. Now that I'm looking at it, I potentially could have played another god with, but the passive block and armor from his first prayer is nice as well. I'm playing Myrmidon for the Inflexibility amplification. My Inflexibility is currently 14. I have capped my block at 90% once I add 45 dex, so I'm not going to go higher than 45 dex. I'm going to put a couple more points into strength and probably pump my vigor after that. Items, Inu Greatsword is the primary item. It's just insane with Inflexibility. And then finally I have the Rebel Jambiya, which I found in the Void, which is actually going to be used for doubling the effect stacks, both freeze and scorch, on my opponents. The Crystal Helm is a core item that I found that I use every run for the build. Freeze and meditate stacks amplification is pretty spicy. Ice Gloves is a great core item. Ice Necklace was subpar. I was looking specifically for the Crystal Armor, for the 3 Inflexibility, and the freeze on block, but this is a good alternative. Kairos Skirt, simply for my Aurora Chant. I had the opportunity at some point to do the Fire and Ice Skirt. The Ragna Wrap, I believe is what it is called. I went with Kairos Skirt just because it provides 2 more Inflexibility. Back to my abilities. So Stand Ground, obviously. Pyrokinesis, Cryokinesis. Fire Healing, I need a lot of points into it because my willpower is pretty low. Pyromancy is nutty on this build. On dealing fire damage, apply Scorch is pretty nutty. Increase all fire damage equal time, or fire damage times skill level times Scorch. So if I have 500 Scorch on someone, I'm gaining 2,500 fire damage on every instance of fire damage. Cryomancy, same thing, but with freeze, and also the freeze on standstill is a very powerful effect when paired with Surtmir. Aurora Chant, like I was talking about, this applies every time I stand still because of the Kairos Skirt, which gives me my massive meditate stacking. Now, I was thinking about doing Frenzy Chant instead of Aurora Chant if I didn't want to lean into meditate. The extra attacks here would be really good against the final boss, but Aurora Chant is much stronger at everything other than the final boss. Like I said, the Rebel Jambiya, I'm going to be replacing the Star Staff with the Jambiya right before I reach the final boss. Before that, I'm going to be using the staff to clear some of the chaff rooms. And that's everything. Surtmir has been quite a fun run. I've been very happy with this prestige, the number of synergies you can do just by stacking freeze, stacking scorch, and it's not a guaranteed win. Up until now, the last couple days, I kept trying the mini boss just before this final zone and dying to weird things. Like there was one time I died to 600 stacks of scorch because I hadn't noticed fast enough to apply my cleanse. Really quick, I want to look at King of Many Colors to see what I'm dealing with. So this is actually pretty scary. It means that he's always going to do damage to me when he attacks me. And he's going to apply Doom on being attacked, which is also a pretty big deal. So this is actually going to be very hard. This is going to be a very hard fight. I think I need to get my max health up, just looking at his abilities. Max health is going to be very important. Popping the prayer every now and then is going to be important. And because of this prayer, meditate is going to be less important for the fight as well. Hopefully when I use Rebel Jambiya on him, with one round of attack, or one round of standstill, I'll get roughly 8 or 9 attacks off, and multiply Scorch and Meditate into the thousands or tens of thousands, and then benefit from Pyromancy and Cryomancy because of it. Like I said, Surtmir applies the same amount of Scorch as Freeze, so every time I double Freeze on the boss with Jambiya, it'll also apply an equal number of Scorch stacks. So, enough talking, let's get into the run, and I'm hoping for a win here. So as usual, I just stand ground. This is a stand ground run. And this room is a good example of very difficult enemies to deal with. But I think my last number of points are going to go into fire healing. I'm going to keep myself in full health if I can. The run itself hasn't had an insane chance to shine until the final boss, because most of my abilities, most of my points are in stand ground, so the boss fight is going to be quite satisfying. A lot of my damage is at range 3 as well, so as long as I'm within range 3 of an enemy, I should be fine. Alright, right about now I should equip the Dagger. And this is the first time I've ever used this. I've heard from a couple players that have played this game that this is an incredibly strong Dagger for Scorch builds, for pure Scorch. I'm hoping that because of my Surtmir prestige, this is going to work with Freeze and Scorch. boss. This is a fantastic spawn. Actually, this is actually got to be one of the best final room spawns I've ever had for a standstill build. There he is. So I press space once, and this is the first round. Look at that. I didn't even get to see the number of stacks on him. The Jambiya just doubled everything over and over. This is a good example, actually. His final damage numbers you can see. So that was a single round of combat. So it started out right around, let's see. Okay. So Pyromancy on standstill. I apply freeze because of ice gloves. I apply scorch, same amount because of my Surtmir prestige. Pyromancy's standstill effect happens. I apply Scorch. Crystal Helm is amplifying all of my free stacks. And finally I start attacking him. Myrmidon is amplifying my physical damage. The hit applies Scorch. Surtmir applies Freeze. Or applies Scorch because of Freeze. And this continues with each stack amplifying my damage. I hit him again. Dice Necklace, 62k damage. Means that he now has 392 freeze, or is it 3000? We'll see. So the stacks of freeze on the target times 10 is the damage, which means he had 3900 stacks of freeze on himself. $7,000 stacks. This means 8k stacks of freeze. single 35 damage instance of cryokinesis was amped by 40,000 because of cryomancy. Ice Necklace is doing work here. It's actually doing more damage than the crystal armor that I would have picked up. I apply 8,000 freeze because of the Rebel Jambiya. I then apply 8,000 scorch because of Surtmir. I then burn him for 120,000 because of the Surtmir fire damage, amplified by pyromancy. This means he has 16,000 stacks of freeze. This means he has 3,214. No, wait. This 500,000 damage instance means that he has 32,000 stacks of freeze on himself. And 65,000 stacks of Scorch. So, Jambiya allowed me to one round the final boss. I can now press 1 to remove my Doom stacks, so that I don't die to an attack. So, that is a good example of a 24th cycle win with Surtmir, or a 23rd cycle win. I'm not actually sure what I would do different if I were to replay. I was very happy with the skills. I think the only thing I could have done differently was equip the Fire and Ice Ragna wrap instead of the Kairos skirt, and picked something other than Aurora Chant, which was doing some serious work. Even though I was going for an Inflexibility build, I decided against Frost Armor, simply because it wasn't giving me enough instances of freeze for the 5 points and the ability slot. I believe the good contender instead of Aurora Chant would have been Master Freeze. Well, I say that, but Surtmir would have also applied an equal number of Scorch stacks to myself. So the other option for an interesting build with Surtmir would be be able to pick up Master Freeze and Master Scorch. You'd very, very quickly stack both effects onto yourself. If you were to do so, I would probably play something other than Dorok. I would play something that works well with effects on self. But the run was strong enough as is, so thank you for watching. Hope you have a good day.